G'day guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be comparing my Garmin R10 versus my new Uneekor Eye Mini. And this is going to be a really exciting video. I do love my Garmin R10. As most of you know who have watched my channel from the beginning, I started with the Garmin R10, and it's the unit that got me back into golf. I stopped playing golf for about 7 or 8 years, and the Garmin R10 actually rekindled my love for the game again. So I do love my Garmin R10. I can't see myself ever parting ways with it. It's nostalgic. It's the unit that kicked off this whole affordable golf simulator at home. So it does hold a place in my heart. Today we're going to start off with chipping. So I didn't do chipping with the MLM2 Pro because there is an update coming. The chipping with the Garmin R10 is solid. So I'm going to be doing chipping to kick things off in this test, and then I'm going to do the exact same test that I did with my MLM2 Pro. However, today I'm going to be doing it on course. I've come out to DPC Sodgrass, and I just feel like it's going to give me more of a feeling that I have to hit a shot rather than standing on the driving range. I will today as well be using the RCT golf balls. So the Garmin R10 will have those RCT golf balls to calculate spin. And the other thing is I'm going to be using the Awesome Golf software with the Garmin R10. The reason for this is because I believe it's the best software to use with your Garmin R10 if you've only got an iPad. Obviously GS Pro is the way to go if you have a PC computer, but Awesome Golf for me is the best software to use for distances and all things accuracy with the Garmin R10. Right, so let's kick things off. I'm going to start with these little chip shots. So we're going to be trying to carry this about 10 yards. I have connected my Eye Mini up using the View software today. So as you can see, we've got club data. And I hit that one a little soft, but as you can see, it registered on both devices. The Garmin R10 is seriously good at chipping. It is a really good unit for chipping. Let's have a look at the data. So we had 6.8 yards carry on the unit itself, 6.8 in GS Pro, and we had 6.7 on the Awesome Golf software. Everything looks really good there. Let's look at some additional data. We'll look at vertical launch angle. We had 30 on the Eye Mini. We had 28.5 on the R10. That all looks good. And looking at spin rates, we had 24.26 on the Garmin. We had 2,500 on the Eye Mini. So yeah, very impressed. Really good stuff. In terms of horizontal launch angle, very similar. We had 0.6 on the R10 and 0.1 on the Eye Mini. I will hit this a little bit harder, so we might go a little bit long. Okay, so I've had 9.5 yards carry in GS Pro, 9.4 on the Eye Mini, and oh, the Garmin R10 missed it. I must have been doing a club waggle or something. So we'll do another shot. Okay, so at 10.8 on GS Pro, 10.6 on the unit itself, 11.6 on the Garmin. Stepping through the other data as well, let's go vertical launch. We had 29.4 on the Eye Mini, 31.3 on the Garmin. Looking at spin, we had 38.42 on the Garmin. We had 3,800, call it, on the Eye Mini, so spin is perfect. I have found the RCT golf balls with the Garmin for spin, they work fantastically. All right, so all that data looks good. Okay, we had 10.8 carry in GS Pro, 10.8 on the unit itself. We had 11.9 on the Garmin R10. Looking at the other data, 32.62 for spin on the Eye Mini. We had 33.30 for spin on the Garmin. We actually got club data on that one for the Garmin. So what I have found using RCT golf balls with the Garmin, generally I don't see club data unless I'm hitting 9-iron and above. But for whatever reason on that one we did. Let's have a look at the actual data itself. Club path, it had left 4.7 versus 2.1 on the Eye Mini. I guess with the Garmin and doing these with the RCT golf ball, take the club data with a grain of salt below 9-iron because sometimes it can be off. Vertical launch is identical, 31.6 versus 31.6. So yeah, all that data looks good. Let's move back and we'll hit our 60-yard shot now. And I did get in contact with the Pro Shop before I did this on course. I did say to them, I'm going to be doing some filming on hole 9. So they have closed the actual front 9 for me, which is good. Everyone's playing the back 9 today. A little bit long. We had 67 yards on the GS Pro, 66 on the unit itself, 67 on the Garmin R10, again using the Awesome Golf software. That is pretty cool. That's literally identical to what we saw in GS Pro. Let's have a look at the other data. So I do need to pay attention to ball speeds today because ball speeds with my driver and the Eye Mini seem to be low compared to all my other units I have, and quite significantly to the Foresight and the PRGR. With the PRGR the other day, I was getting about 4 miles extra ball speed on the PRGR compared to the Eye Mini. With my Foresight, it was about 7 to 8, and then even with my Rapsodo, I was getting more ball speed out of the Rapsodo with the driver, but we'll keep an eye on that. Let's look at vertical launch, 33.2 on the Garmin, 30.9 on the Eye Mini. Looking at actual shot shape, they both had a slight fade. What I will do is I'll turn my shot tracer on so then you can see the actual shot shapes. Spin axis, we had on the Garmin 6.1 right, we had 6.2 right with the Eye Mini. That's incredible. So far, I mean, the Garmin R10 with the RCT golf balls is kicking goals. So 65 yard carry on GS Pro, 64 on the unit itself, 66 on the Garmin R10. Again, pretty close. Let's look at shot shape. Let's look at the other data. 8400 spin on the Eye Mini. Let's have a look at spin. We had 8400, call it, on the R10, so pretty much identical. Spin axis, we had 6.2 right on the Garmin. We had 2.4 left on the Eye Mini. Okay, so we've had our first big discrepancy in spin axis. Vertical launch, we had 31 on the Garmin. We had 29.2 on the Eye Mini. So the Garmin so far is reading vertical launch just a little bit more. Horizontal launch is both the same. They're both just to the right. All right, very interesting. Let's hit a couple more of these shots. 62, we're getting closer for distance. 62 on GS Pro, 61.3 on the unit itself, 65.5 on the Garmin. That's interesting because the Rapsodo on these short shots as well read the distance just a little bit more than the Eye Mini. Very interesting. We'll keep an eye on that. Ball speeds, we had 59.6 on the Eye Mini. We had 61.3 on the Garmin. I guess the biggest thing right now is the spin axis. Again, a slight fade on the Garmin, and again, a slight draw on the Eye Mini. So that's the biggest thing we're seeing right now. Garmin fades, Eye Mini draw. Spin rates, 89, 81 on the Eye Mini versus 85 on the Garmin. All right, let's hit one more 60-yard shot, and then we'll move into pitching wedge. A little bit out to the right. We had 63.6 on GS Pro, 62.8 on the unit itself, 66 on the Garmin. And the Garmin picked up on the right shot. It did feel right, and both units read it going, at least starting right. Distance again, a little bit longer on the Garmin. Ball speeds, again, a little bit more on the Garmin. Vertical launch, 31.6 on the Garmin versus 28.4. Spin rates, 9,000 on the Eye Mini versus 87.72 on the Garmin. And spin axis, again, we're seeing a slight fade on the Garmin and a slight draw on the Eye Mini. But both of those are so slight. In real life, that would look dead straight. Very interesting there. Okay, let's move to pitching wedge. So I am doing this test on course for the first time, and what people will say is you've got wind, you've got other environmental factors that are gonna affect the yardages. I am using carry raw, as you can see in the top right-hand corner. That takes out any environmental factors in the shot. You've got a different couple of carry types in GS Pro. So if I click on that, you've got carry raw, which is going to take out any of the environmental factors. You've got carry game, which includes all the environmental factors, wind and all that. And then you've got carry launch monitor, and that is carried directly from the launch monitor. So just know that you do have a few options. Carry raw is going to be the actual true yardage with no environmental factors. Not a good strike there to start off with, but we'll get our data. So we had 128.3 on GS Pro, we had 127 on the unit itself, we had 131.8 on the Garmin R10. Looking at the other data, let's look at spin axis, because I reckon that's going to be quite interesting. Spin axis, see, this is where the Garmin is going to struggle. I hit that way out the heel, which is going to slightly cause the club face to close or deflect left. The Garmin's seen that, and it's gone, the ball's going left, therefore it's a draw, whereas the Eye Mini picked up on the spin axis and the gear effect essentially from the golf club, and it's gone, no, it was actually a fade. Looking at the other data, let's look at spin. We had 81.29 on the Eye Mini versus 78.59 on the R10. Ball speeds, we had 99.7 on the Garmin, 98.2 on the Eye Mini. So again, seeing ball speed slightly down on the Eye Mini. All right, we had 135.5 on GS Pro, 134 on the unit itself. Okay, look at this. 158.7. That was a misread on the Garmin. We might just have to delete that shot. I'll leave it in. Obviously, I'm not going to take any shots out. But that is... Okay, it's the spin. It read the spin as 4,200 instead of 8,400. So it looks like it's cut the spin in half. Odd. All right, we'll keep an eye on that. Misreads are going to happen on both units. I've actually had some odd misreads on the Eye Mini. There'll be an odd shot every now and then that'll just add a massive slice or a massive hook to the ball, and I can confirm that it didn't do that. I have seen that with the Eye Mini, so both units are going to have misreads. All right, let's try and hit another good shot. It was a nice shot. So we had 132.7 on GS Pro, 132 on the unit itself. We had 134 on the Garmin, so that's better. That's much better there. Let's look at the rest of the data. Ball speed, 102.5 on the Garmin, 102.3 on the Eye Mini. So ball speeds are good there. We did have club speed there on the Garmin, so 85.3 versus 86.9 on the Eye Mini. Vertical launch angle, 25.7 on the Garmin, 24.3 on the Eye Mini. Looking at horizontal launch, they're very similar. Let's go across to spin, and that looks much better there on the Garmin. 86.94 versus 86.89 on the Eye Mini. And finally, spin axis. The Garmin had it going dead straight, and as you can see, the Eye Mini had a draw. So spin axis is going to be the major theme of this video, I think. Okay, that was the best strike of the bunch. We had 135.8 in GS Pro, 135 on the unit itself, 139.6 on the Garmin R10. Looking at the rest of the data, club speed 87.6 on the Garmin, 87.5 on the Eye Mini. Ball speed 106.4 on the Garmin versus 104.3 on the Eye Mini. So yeah, again, we're seeing 2 miles an hour slower on the Eye Mini. Let's go across. Vertical launch 27 on the Garmin versus 24.8 on the Eye Mini. There's a little bit of a discrepancy there, and there's kind of a common theme that the Garmin R10, the vertical launch is always seeming to be a couple of degrees higher out of the Garmin R10 versus the Eye Mini. With that as well, this could be your environment. Like my garage is sloping back to front. I've tried to level off my Garmin R10 and my Rapsodo as much as I can, but just know that it could potentially be someone's environment, a couple of degrees vertical launch. So yeah, just be aware of that. Spin, we had 84.39 on the Garmin versus 84.89 on the Eye Mini. Spin with these RCT balls is fantastic. Looking at the spin axis, we had 0.9 right on the Garmin versus a 5.7 left, a draw on the Eye Mini. So again, common theme, we're seeing fade from the Garmin, draw on the Eye Mini. Let's move up to 7 iron. That one felt left. Not too far left. Actually a pretty good shot. 170 on the GS Pro software, 169 on the Eye Mini. We had 169.7 on the R10. So pretty good there for distances. Ball speeds, we had 120.8 on the Garmin. We had 119.5 on the Eye Mini. Again, ball speeds slightly slower on the Eye Mini. Club speeds, 90.5 on the Garmin versus 90.5 on the Eye Mini, so they're identical. Vertical launch, 20 degrees on the Garmin R10. We had 18.2 on the Eye Mini, again seeing 2 degrees discrepancy there. Horizontal launch, both the same, just to the right. Spin, we had 62.94 on the Garmin. We had 5.888 on the Eye Mini, so tiny bit of a discrepancy there. Looking at spin axis, we had a 7.8 degree fade on the Garmin versus a slight draw on the Eye Mini. So I have lined these units up. They are both aligned. As you can see, the horizontal launch angle is good, but we are seeing a discrepancy in the spin axis between the two units. And looking at that club path, that is potentially why. The Garmin's saying I had a left 5.7 degree path, and the club face relative to that path was 8 degrees open, and the Eye Mini saying I was 1.6 into out with my club path. Now, the Eye Mini doesn't do club face or face to path, but it does give our horizontal launch angle is slightly right. So very interesting there. Definitely something to keep an eye on. Might have potentially been a slight misread with the club data from the Garmin. Okay, pretty good shot there. Left the face open slightly, and that's why the spin's up at 7 grand. We had 169.3 carry distance on GS Pro. We had 168 on the unit itself. We had 173.7 on the R10. Looking at ball speeds, we had 123.1 from the Garmin. We had 122.2 from the Eye Mini. Pretty consistent theme that ball speed is slightly down on the Eye Mini compared to the Garmin. Club speed, we had 88.2 on the Garmin. We had 90 on the Eye Mini. Let's go across. Vertical launch, 19.8 on the Garmin, 18.4 on the Eye Mini. Again, consistent theme, Garmin slightly higher. Looking at spin, 6,200 call it on the Garmin with a 1.0 right spin axis. And on the Eye Mini, 7,090 with a 1.8 right spin axis. So at least spin axis there was similar between the two units. Club data's there on the bottom. We had a 3.1 right path on the Garmin. We had a 2.1 into out, so right path on the Eye Mini. So those are both correct. And of course, you're getting the face to path there on the Garmin. Oh, it's going to be a pull. Just missed the green. 171.5 carry on GS Pro software, 170 carry on the unit itself, 175 on the Garmin R10. Club speeds, we had 88.8 on the Garmin, we had 89.3 on the Eye Mini. Ball speeds, 124 on the Garmin, 122 on the Eye Mini. Again, a couple of miles an hour down on the Eye Mini. Vertical launch, 18.9 on the Garmin, 17.6 on the Eye Mini. Horizontal launches, Garmin showing a little bit more right than the Eye Mini. And looking at the spin, 62.11 on the Garmin versus 64.58 on the Eye Mini. Spin axis, again, the Garmin showing a fade, whereas the Eye Mini had that as a draw. Club path, 0.5 into out on the Eye Mini. Club path 2.7 to the right. So at least they're the same way, but the Garmin's just saying it was a bit more into out. Okay, moving up to 4-iron now. And this is a tough shot. I would hate to have to hit this shot in real life. Oh, especially hitting it like that. That was a massive duff. Workout. I'll take it. Looking at the carry distance, we had 196.7 on GS Pro, 197 on the unit itself. We had 206 on the Garmin. So that's a major discrepancy in carry distance there. You're talking almost 10 yards difference there. Let's look at the rest of the data. So we had ball speed, call it 130 on the Garmin. We had 128.6 on the Eye Mini. Club speed, 96.3 on the Garmin. 94.4 on the Eye Mini. Let's go across to vertical launch, 14.6 on the Garmin versus 14.2 on the Eye Mini. So vertical launch there is actually pretty close. Let's look at spin. We had 39.61 on the Garmin. We had 38.61 on the Eye Mini. Spin axis, again a fade on the Garmin versus a draw on the Eye Mini. Club path, 0.2 to the right on the Garmin, and club path, we had 2.7 into out on the Eye Mini. So both of them were slightly into out. The Eye Mini saying it was a bit more. And what's surprising me with this test so far is the Garmin it's been fade bias. Pretty much every shot has been a fade versus the draw on the Eye Mini. I do tend to hit a draw, and I do hit a draw with my foresight, and also the Rapsodo MLM2 Pro, you know, I hit draws on that as well. They're all similar. They're all very, very consistent with the shot shape. So Garmin is a little bit fade bias at the moment. Better strike there. I'll take that shot all day. That was lovely. Okay, we had 204.2 yards carry on GS Pro. Look at that clubhouse in the background. 204 yards on the unit itself. Let's have a look at the Garmin. We had 212.4 yards carry on the Garmin. So again, the Garmin, using the Awesome Golf software, is saying the carry distance is a bit further than the iMini and also GS Pro's algorithm. I will compare this to the Garmin software, because the Garmin software, the carry distances are a little bit less than GS Pro. So I think the Garmin software will be a lot more in line with what we're seeing from the iMini and also GS Pro. So for ball speeds, we had 133.6 on the Garmin versus 132.2 on the iMini. Again, ball speeds quicker with the Garmin. Club speeds, 95.9 on the Garmin versus 93.8 on the iMini. Vertical launch, 14.2 on the Garmin versus 14.3 on the iMini. So vertical launch has really come into its own on the 4 irons on the Garmin. And then spin rates, 39.89 on the Garmin versus 37.85 on the iMini. Spin axis, pretty much dead straight on the Garmin, and a draw on the iMini. Looking at the club path, we had 2.6 to the right on the Garmin, and we had 1.4 into out on the iMini. So both going the same way, the Garmin just saying it was a bit more into out than the iMini. Okay, another one of those 4 irons, please. That was really nice. Oh, it wasn't a nice shot. It was a toe. A little bit heavy and off the toe. Just in the front bunker. We had 193 yards carry on the GS Pro software, 193 on the actual unit itself, 206.8 on the Garmin. Again, 4 irons, the carry distance has been quite different. Let's look at ball speeds. We had 128 on the Garmin versus 126 on the iMini. Very, very consistent theme that ball speeds are slower on the iMini than the Garmin R10. Club speeds, 93.8 versus 91.8. So club speed, again, a little bit quicker with the Garmin. Vertical launch, 16 on the Garmin versus 14.4 on the iMini. Spin rates, 3,800 on the Garmin versus 3,600 on the iMini. Spin axis, a fade on the Garmin versus a draw on the iMini. That's been a very consistent theme of this video. We've had pretty much fades on every shot on the Garmin and draws on every shot on the iMini. Club path, 2.8 to the right on the Garmin, 2 degrees on the iMini. Okay, let's hit one more 4 iron and then we'll go to driver. Right, I'm gonna leave that in because that wasn't that bad of a shot. I mean, it wasn't a good shot, don't get me wrong, it wasn't a good shot, but that is a misread from the iMini 100%. Each of these units, no unit's perfect. And in fact, that misread just then on the iMini, I didn't really see those with my GC2. Let's have a look at that. Let's dive into that because that is really interesting. Now, I will say I didn't hit that good. What I'm going to do is I'll pull up the view software and we'll just have a look at that last shot. It looked like there was a little bit of, I mean, I didn't hit it good, but look at impact. The cameras just kind of glitch out, it looks like, just at impact. So real odd. It wasn't a good shot, don't get me wrong. The face was open, I hit it bad, but look at the little glitch at impact. So let's dive into this a little bit more because, like I said, you're going to get misreads with any unit you get. When you buy something as expensive as the iMini, you don't really think you should be seeing those misreads, but you're going to get misreads. But I guess this is a good thing to highlight this with the iMini. So looking at that data, again, carry distances, you can see 174, 173 on the unit itself versus 203 from the Garmin. It wasn't a good strike. Let's look at ball speeds, 130.4 on the Garmin versus 129 on the iMini. Club speeds, 96.5 on the Garmin versus 94 on the iMini. What we're going to see a difference in, we'll get to it in a minute, is spin. So 15.4 vertical launch on the Garmin, 14.6 on the iMini. Okay, let's highlight this now. 42.53 for a spin on the Garmin, which is legit, and I'd expect that off a mishit with a 4-iron. That looks like a legit spin number. Look at the spin on the Eye Mini, 86.36. It's almost like it's doubled the spin. It's taken the spin and it's just doubled it. And look at the side spin. We've had 15.58 on the Eye Mini. So that is a massive misread for spin on the Eye Mini. And it potentially is because of that little glitch in the cameras that you saw at impact. Very interesting. Spin axis, the Garmin had a slight fade. As you can see on the Eye Mini, the spin axis is 10.4, which is just wrong. But I guess the good thing about that shot is highlighting, I guess, the deficiencies in the Eye Mini that potentially they can work on with a software update. So hopefully someone from Uneekor sees this video or it gets to them somehow and they can see this shot. All right, let's hit another 4-iron. Let's try and end on a good one. Okay, not the best strike, but it was a lot better than the last. We had 198.3 carry on GS Pro, 198 on the Eye Mini itself, and then 213 on the Garmin using the Awesome Golf software. Let's look at the rest of the data. Ball speed, 133.2 from the Garmin, 130 on the Eye Mini, 3 miles an hour difference. I mean, that is going to add up. That is definitely going to add up. Let's move over to vertical launch, 15 on the Garmin, 13.4 on the Eye Mini. And then spin rates, 39.65 on the Garmin versus 39.74 on the Eye Mini. Spin axis, Garmin had a big fade and the Eye Mini had a draw. Okay, finally, driver, let's go. Okay. We had 261.8 carry on GS Pro, 269 on the Eye Mini itself, 248 on the Garmin. What happened there? Let's dig into this data. Ball speeds, we had 156.9 on the Garmin, 107 club head speed, call it. On the Eye Mini, we had 154.8 ball speed, 109 club head speed. So again, we're seeing a drop in ball speed from the Garmin to the Eye Mini. Let's go across. I think the spin might have been the error on the Garmin, but we'll have a look. 10.8 for vertical launch on the Garmin, 12 on the Eye Mini. Spin rates, we had 1920 on the Garmin. We had 1800 on the Eye Mini. No, so the spins were quite good. Looking at spin axis, we had 4.2 left on the Garmin. We had 8.5 left on the Eye Mini, so a bit more of a draw on the Eye Mini, but at least we saw a draw on the Garmin. Finally, we've had a draw. So I don't know what's going on with that carry distance on the Garmin using the Awesome Golf software, but it was quite significantly down compared to the Eye Mini and the GS Pro software. Okay, better swing there. We had 279 yards carry on GS Pro software, 287 on the Eye Mini, and we had 275 on the Garmin. So that's a little bit closer. That looks pretty good with GS Pro software and the Garmin software. The Eye Mini saying it was 287. I'll take the 287, but let's have a look at the other numbers. 160.7 ball speed on the Garmin, 160.1 ball speed on the Eye Mini. Pretty similar, again, half a mile an hour difference in favor of the Garmin. Club speeds, we had 106.2 on the Garmin, 113.9 on the Eye Mini. So that's a big discrepancy. For me, I tend to believe the Garmin because I am still warming up. And 114 club speed for me is, I'm not going to say maxing out because I have swung at 117, but 114 for me is when I'm pretty warmed up and I'm in full flow, then I would expect to see 114, not on the second driver swing of the day. Let's look at the rest of the information. So vertical launch on the Garmin was 13 versus 13.4 on the Eye Mini, so that's both pretty good. Spin rates, 27.58 on the Garmin versus 16.31 on the Eye Mini. I tend to believe the Eye Mini there. I think that the 27.57 is an estimated spin from the Garmin. Spin axis, 4.3 to the right on the Garmin versus a slight draw on the Eye Mini. Again, in real life, those shots would probably look pretty straight. Not the best strike there. A little bit out the toe, causing that gear effect. Let's look at the data. We had 260 call it yards carry on GS Pro. We had 265 on the Eye Mini. We had 264 on the Garmin. So carry distances are all pretty similar there. Ball speeds, we had 159.2 on the Garmin versus 157 on the Eye Mini. So again, a couple of miles an hour difference. Club speeds, 107.5 versus 109.2 on the Eye Mini. Vertical launch, 11.3 on the Garmin, 11.4 on the Eye Mini. Spin rates, 2416 on the Garmin versus 2080 on the Eye Mini. So spin rates a little bit off, about, what, 380 RPM off, but pretty close. Big discrepancy here is obviously the shot shape. 1.3 right spin axis on the Garmin versus the gear effect towed shot of the Eye Mini, giving the correct spin axis being quite a significant draw. Okay, I'm telling you now, that was not slicing that much. That was actually a pretty good shot. So again, we're seeing a misread from the Eye Mini. That is a definite misread, because that was actually a pretty good shot. I just wonder whether my shoes, I do have reflective tape on my shoes. They're Echo shoes that have reflective tape. I just wonder if they're interfering with the Eye Mini's cameras, because I did used to get that with the Foresight sometimes, not with these shoes, with my other Echo shoes, but I just wonder if that's interfering with the cameras on the Eye Mini. I'm just going to go into the view software to show you that. It was actually a decent shot. I actually towed it a little bit, so if anything, it should have gear affected left. But let's just have a look. You can see the club come in. It was actually a pretty decent shot and decent strike there. A little bit out the toe. But you can see the ball actually has a slight draw. If you look at the line on the ball, the Pro V1 line, it's actually curving with a slight draw. So definite misread there from the Eye Mini. And that's really interesting to see. Let's just have a look what it looked like in the actual Uneekor software. It did have a big fade or big slice, which for me, I don't see, to be honest. I had that as a gear effect draw, if anything. You can see there my shoes, that reflective strip that I'm talking about. Potentially, that might be causing some sort of interference. So what I might do is cover that up or blank it out, and then hopefully we don't have those issues. It could potentially be the shoes that are causing this issue, because you can see the bloom there of the IR off that reflective strip. So yeah, potentially this is causing some sort of interference. Okay, I've just jerry-rigged it. I've stuffed a bit of cardboard down the front of my shoe. So let's see if that changes things. What I will do is go over the data actually of that shot. So let's dig into that. Even though it was a misread, we'll still go through it. Ball speeds, 161.6 from the Garmin versus 160.4 on the Eye Mini. Ball speeds, again, quicker on the Garmin. Club speeds, 107.6 on the Garmin versus 109.1 on the Eye Mini. Vertical launch, 14.8 versus 14.3. Spin rates, 1929 versus 3279. Obviously, that was a misread. Do you know what's interesting is the Garmin had that as a big fade as well, but as we know with the Garmin, if you tow a shot, it can't account for the gear effect. And we did physically see that ball with a right to left shape in the view software. Okay, that was a good shot. Got a little bit of a fade going. Oh, it might be wet. It is wet. We had 271.5 yards carry on GS Pro, 277 on the Eye Mini itself. We had 279 or 278.8 on the Garmin. So for carry distances, they're all pretty good. Ball speed, 160.8 on the Garmin, 160 on the Eye Mini. So we're seeing again a little bit higher on the Garmin, but a lot closer. Club speeds, identical between the two units, 109 versus 109. Vertical launch, 15.3 on the Garmin, 13.7 on the Eye Mini. Spin rates, 2548 on the Garmin versus 2600 on the Eye Mini. Shot shapes, spin axis there, 7.8 right on the Garmin. We had 5.3 right on the Eye Mini. Those two shots were pretty much identical between the two units, so that's good to see. Even the club data, 1.8 left on the Garmin. We had 0.8 right on the Eye Mini. Let's just have a look on the View software real quick, and you'll see my jerry rig. Oh, that shoe, I've still got to cover up my right shoe, but you can see I hit that one pretty good, pretty close to the center of the club face. And then you can see the ball take off, and you can see I have covered up that shoe there, that reflective tape. Okay, let's hit one more driver and then we'll wrap this up. Best drive of the bunch. That's going to be wet. Get left. Starting to get warmed up now. That was a beautiful drive. So we had 281 yards carry on the GS Pro software. We had 287 yards carry on the Eye Mini. We had 278 yards carry on the Garmin. Looking at ball speeds, 162 on the Garmin, 160.5 on the Eye Mini. I've said it every single shot, 2 miles an hour more out of the Garmin versus the Eye Mini. Club speeds are the opposite, 108.7 on the Garmin versus 111.8 on the Eye Mini. Let's move across to vertical launch. We had 12.8 on the Garmin and we had 13.7 on the Eye Mini. Spin rates, 28.19 on the Garmin versus 2000 on the Eye Mini. I think that might be an estimated spin rate on the Garmin, and that's probably why the distance has come up a little bit shorter than the Eye Mini and GS Pro software. Spin axis, Garmin had it again with a right spin axis, and the Eye Mini had it as a right spin axis. So Garmin R10 saying a bit more of a fade, and that's the common theme from the video, is the Garmin R10 has always said everything's been a fade, whereas the Eye Mini's had draws for most of the shots, apart from the drivers. Club path, Garmin said I cut across at 1.5 degrees, and the Eye Mini said I cut across at 0.4 of a degree. All right, so wrapping all of that up, how did the Garmin R10 go against the Eye Mini? David versus Goliath, a unit that costs about 8 times less than the Eye Mini. So on those chip shots, the Garmin R10 was fantastic. Yes, it missed one. All the units are going to miss one. You'd rather it miss one than give a misread. So it missed a chip shot, but I think the Garmin R10, for its price, it is the best unit for chipping. I mean, it's far superior to the MLM2 Pro at the moment. The MLM2 Pro needs to update its chipping. They will update the firmware. They've acknowledged it, but the chipping on the Garmin R10 is fantastic. All the distances on those chip shots were good as well. Moving into the 60-yard shots. Both units perform really well on these shots, but we started to see a couple of common themes with the R10 and the Eye Mini. One of those themes was the ball speed. So the ball speed, even on the 60-yard shots, the Garmin read a little bit quicker. And the other theme we saw was the spin axis. So the spin axis on the Garmin with those 60-yard shots, it did have every shot as a fade, versus the Eye Mini, a few of them were draws. Going into the irons, with pitching wedge, 7-iron and 4-iron, that theme continued. We saw ball speeds quicker with the Garmin R10, and we also saw spin axis fades on the Garmin R10 versus draw on the Eye Mini. I do naturally draw the ball. That is my natural shot shape. And if we look at the videos in the View software, you could see that spin axis right to left. Moving into driver. Now, we did see a couple of big misses from the Eye Mini. I'm going to definitely look into that because I think it might be my shoes. It might be the reflective tape just kind of messing with the cameras. So I'm going to cover those up and I'm going to see if I still get those errors. But moving into drivers, we saw ball speeds definitely quicker with the Garmin R10. You're talking about 2 miles an hour, 2 to 3, I think. We saw 3 on some shots on the out of the Garmin R10 versus the Eye Mini. And the club speeds with the Eye Mini seemed to jump all over the place. There was a couple of really quick ones, couple of ones that matched the Garmin R10. In terms of club speed and ball speed, I mean, I'm going to have to say, I think the Garmin with the club and ball speeds potentially was more accurate than the Eye Mini. And I hate to say that because I just got this Eye Mini and it's a fantastic unit and I love it. But I did see club and ball speeds out of the Garmin R10, I think the Garmin R10 club and ball speeds were more accurate. And I know the Eye Mini's just come out, so they're going to be working through all those teething problems. The Garmin R10's been out for years. I know Uneekor are going to be working through those teething problems, trying to get this thing with software updates up to scratch. But as it stands, I think Uneekor does need to work on their club and ball speed, because to me, they're off. In terms of shot shape, again, with driver, the Garmin just struggled. I think we had one draw the whole test with the Garmin, and it was one driver that I toe hooked. So the Garmin R10 spin axis, again, is slightly off. But hopefully that gives you a better understanding. Hopefully you enjoyed that test. If you did, let me know. Please do subscribe to the channel as well if you watch these videos. Hope you enjoyed that, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.